Welcome to another episode of Deep True Crime. I'm Manny Rodriguez. In today's episode, I want to share with you the new email that Kouri Richins sent in defense of some of her activity after his death. Now, this was her email to justify why she was going on vacation, why she wasn't working. And so we're going to be diving into this as we continue the coverage of Kouri Richins, who is accused of killing her husband Eric by giving him a shot of Moscow Mule, a drink of Moscow Mule with about 5 times the dose of fentanyl, causing his death. And so we're going to be diving into what we know at this time. As we know, there's been a lot to this crazy story. And so we're going to continue. I'll be right back. Well, a little technical difficulty there. I'm trying this new software, so I'm getting used to it. And when I added my headphones, because I realized I didn't have it, it lost my video. But regardless, my friends, let's dive into this crazy email that Kouri Richins sent in reference to why her great husband, Eric Richins, why she went on some lavish, exotic vacations afterwards. We're talking about Spain. We're talking about Mexico. And she offered reasons as to why she did that. Now, she recently had her hearing. She had her first day in court, basically. And her defense was arguing that she deserves bail. And so you have this Utah mom and also now a children's author, because she penned a book after the death of her husband in reference to what? This is how we're dealing with his death, only to later be charged with his death. We find out that she wrote a chilling email to police as a way to explain away those exotic vacations that she took after his death. You see, Kouri Richins, she is said to have allegedly poisoned her husband Eric with a fentanyl-laced Moscow Mule in March of 2022. This was before she decided to publish a picture book as a way to help children cope with the death of a loved one. You know, how do you deal with one of the most worst things a child can be faced with? Right? They lost their dad. And so she felt, let me write a book basically capitalizing on his death, which would have sounded great if she wasn't later charged with his death. So she writes an email. She writes the email to police while the death of her husband was being investigated. And she addressed some questions that they had to her about why she would take these lavish trips while grieving his death. That's a fair question. And so she claimed that he did not want her to work because he feared that she would have an affair with a colleague just like his ex-wife had done. And so in this email, she makes reference to Eric's affair. And she was claiming that he had at one point even cheated on her as well, causing her to what she would refer to as her version of moving out. And so in this email, she says, you asked about an exotic vacation that I had taken since Eric's passing. And so she shares that I went on 2 trips last year. Now, I noticed in this email that it's addressed to Chad Hoffmeyer and Frank Root. I am not going to read this whole email. Okay? I'm going to share some of the highlights behind this email. But look at how she starts out with this email. Hey there. I thought I would clarify some other items on your list that you spoke to someone about. It might have been, I don't know. She talks about her nanny in this email. She talks about COVID. She talks about buying all these tests. And so, she was talking about her lavish lifestyle and how she traveled, and this is where she stayed. You can see, so I stayed at Casablanca. Didn't want to miss the soccer tournament. This soccer tournament. In this email, she says, I went on 2 trips last year. She says, 1, my kids tried out at a soccer camp in Salt Lake City to qualify to play in Spain in June. And both my kids made it. So yes, I took them to Spain in October of 2022. That was one reason that she said, yes, we did take this lavish trip while I was grieving for my husband in the months, following his death. But in the months before her husband's death, Kouri, she had attempted to make herself the sole beneficiary of his life insurance policy without him knowing. And so she literally changes it, which affects other people involved. And so a police search warrant noted that Eric had expressed concerns that his wife was trying to kill him. And he had changed his will and power of attorney and gave it to his sister and gave her full control before this Moscow Mule poisoning. Now, while investigations were ongoing, police found that, hey, Kouri had taken a number of trips soon after her husband's sudden and shocking death. Even she said, how could a healthy man like this, who was physically fit, suddenly die? I'm paraphrasing. I'm not quoting her exact words. And so, even though she was said to be shocked by this whole thing, she finds it in herself to take 2 trips in 2022. And so she's detailing these 2 trips in this email to police. Literally. And she says, I hope you understand the months prior to this since Eric's death has been hard to deal with. That's what she writes in this. She says, I took my kids and my mom came with us in August of 2022. As I hope you understand, the months prior to this, since Eric's death, have been hard to deal with. But she found it in herself to go have a lot of fun while she's supposed to be a grieving wife, right? And so we're finding out a lot more about this. But what we don't really know is it all about money, or is there something else? We have not heard about an affair on her part. Yes, it is said Eric did have an affair. Yes, that is very wrong. It should not be a death row sentence. It should not be where he loses his life for having an affair, because that gives no grounds to stand on. So why would she do this other than money? Other than not really being in love any longer and wanting to be out. And so she writes this letter to try to justify her trips. She even says that, even though police are looking into these suspicious trips, the Utah mom claimed that her family routinely took these overseas holidays every year. In the email, she says, also, Eric and I went to Mexico every year, sometimes twice. We traveled a lot. We have taken the boys to Mexico a few times. This is not new for us to go to Mexico or for us to go out of the country or on a vacation with our kids. That is, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. If he was alive and you were still doing that, yes, that makes sense. That's not out of the ordinary. But what do you do when a loved one, I guess we got to ask ourselves, how is the kids dealing with this? Kids are a little more, depending on the age, some can bounce back a little sooner than others. And we don't know the situation here for kids. We don't really know how this all works. But the email, here Richins is claiming that her husband did not want me working because his ex-wife had an affair with a colleague. She said that Eric had wanted her to be a homemaker and a typical conservative wife, and her job as a real estate agent threatened him. So she is saying that my husband felt threatened by me going out, me having a job because of a previous marriage. Now, we did hear previously, I did report on it as we were learning, that he did go through a divorce and he was seriously hurt by it. And so he was trying to protect himself as well. But poor Eric, poor buddy, here he is having to deal with this now, right? He had some ideas that my life may be in jeopardy. He had some ideas about this. And so what we don't know, and we'll never, ever know, though he had his suspicions, and we know he loved his kids to the very end, because he said, I don't want to be away from my kids. That was a big concern about this. He did not want to be away from his kids, even though his life, he thought, was on the line. He thought his wife was trying to kill him. He did not want to leave his kids. But what we don't know, and we'll never, ever, ever know, I don't think, why did he take that drink? And was it one sip kills? We don't think, we may never know this. What we will know is that when this thing goes to trial, there's going to be a lot of information that comes out in reference to the timeline, in reference to a lot of stuff I'm sure we don't know. Just like this email. We didn't know about this email before yesterday. At least I didn't know about this email before yesterday. Did you know about this email? If you're investigating this case, you knew about this email. But if you're a creator like myself, you most likely did not know about this email until it began to be reported, right? And so Eric, he knew the red flags were there. What were his last moments like? Because he knew she was a threat. She was threatening. His life was in danger. What did he know? Right? And so little by little, we are going to continue to find out about that. But until then, at this time, we're just going to know what we know as the prosecutor dives into it, as the defense tries to throw away all of the prosecution's claims. We're going to learn a lot about this. But in her email, she's saying that Eric, he wanted us to live this typical conservative life. She says, that is not my personality and not the way I was raised. I am very independent. That's what she said in reference to their life. Eric had reportedly been carrying out an affair for some time before his death. But Richins said the couple had been trying to work through their issues. So we don't know where this affair comes from. We don't know much about the affair at this time. Again, a lot of information is going to continue to come out through this whole thing. Is that not a fair statement? So what they've been married for a while, and she says she's very independent. Right? She's claiming not guilty. right? I believe she gave a verdict of not guilty, asking for bond, trying to get out, not looking like it's going to happen for her at the time. But it is said that he was carrying out an affair. She added that she had been holding back from moving out of their home and only threatened to do so to get him to end this alleged affair that he was having. Now, Richins, she said that, she detailed her mental health problems in this email. And you can see a portion of it as she was sharing right there. Mental health, yes. I got postpartum after my second child in 2014. Yes, I took medication for it. No, Eric and I did not have financial problems ever. Yes, Eric made more money than me. Do you make more money than your wives? Have I ever been financially reliant on Eric in the last 5 years? Absolutely not. And that's when she goes on to say Eric did not want me working because, one, his first wife cheated on him with the guy at work. Two, I'm not too sure that has been edited out. Three, Eric wanted us to live the typical conservative life where the man takes care of his family and the wife is a homemaker. Wife, and that's it. She says, that is not my personality and not the way I was raised. My friends, could that be a motive? He wants it this way. That's not me. We know they've been married for a while. She says her second child in 2014. It is, I don't know if it's normal for everyone, but postpartum depression is definitely a thing. I've seen it when my second child was born and I saw it in her mother. They go through that moment. My second child, her first child. And so I do know that's a thing, but I'm not going to play like a doctor or I understand because that's above my head. What I do know is that she is sharing in this email. She's sharing in this email that, this is what he wanted. This is not what I wanted. That's what she says. He wants a typical conservative wife. She says, that's not me. She says her job as a real estate agent threatened him. Now, you best believe there will be witnesses that go on the stand and say, no, he never was threatened, if that's the case. Or, yes, he was threatened. We're going to find out a lot more of that. This is a very interesting case. That's why I keep you updated. So if you want to continue the Kouri Richins story, you're going to want to hit that subscribe button because I'm keeping you updated on all of what comes out of this. And so she is sharing in this email what she feels. She says, that's not me. He didn't want me working. That's not me. I am independent, right? She says, I am very independent. That's what she says. Is that a reason to kill? Is that also a motive? Because here he is now, been all along feeling like, I think my wife is trying to kill me all along. And now we find out that maybe, just maybe, that could be a motive. Again, we're going to continue to find out a lot of this. And with that, she's even admitting that she did have mental health problems. She's saying that she had postpartum. And so she even puts in this email, about this investigation into her husband's death. And if you followed my last video, I talked about her Google searches, and she even searched about this federal investigation against her. Something along those lines. Check out the last video. And she puts in this about the alleged harassment that she's wanting to halt. this alleged harassment by a private investigator and her husband's family, because no one was blinded by her except her. Literally, that's the only one. She says, I just want this over. I just want our lives back and to move on and grieve and mourn my husband's death. My husband, literally, I want to mourn my husband without looking over my shoulder constantly for you guys. That is what she said. Or the idiotic private investigator or the Richins family. That's what she put in that email. Whatever I can do to help close this out, just ask. I'll give you or tell you whatever you want to know. Well, I'm guessing they're probably thinking at that moment the truth. Now, earlier this year, that's why I was sharing about this book. That's when she appears on a local TV station to promote her book. And this book she writes after the death of her husband. And she says it's a way to help the children cope. She even says it completely took us all by shock. His sudden death. She says, we have 3 little boys, 10, 9, and 6, and my kids and I kind of wrote this book on the different emotions and grieving processes that we've experienced in the last year. Does that also mean that she's now profiting off of his death that she is alleged to have done? And she said that she was motivated to write the book after searching Amazon and Barnes and Nobles and finding nothing to help them deal with this. To help them cope with the loss of a loved one. She says, I went on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles to try to find something to help us cope at nights. Nights are the hardest. I just wanted some story to read to my kids at night, and I couldn't find anything that suited them, so I was like, let's just write one. She told police that she had performed CPR on Eric after finding him unresponsive in their home, but fire crew and medics who responded to the scene said this was unlikely as there was blood coming from his mouth. Okay, then where's the blood on her if she was giving him, doing anything? And so that didn't add up. And of course they're going to dig deeper and deeper, and that's when they find hey, she actually bought $900 worth of fentanyl pills from an acquaintance before the Valentine's Day meal, and 2 weeks later she asked for $900 more. Days later, Eric dies of an overdose. And so court documents show that he suffered an allergic reaction following a meal with Richins. He could not breathe and passed out after using an EpiPen and taken Benadryl. And so that's why it's this does not sound right. Why doesn't she just come clean? Everything around this is so odd. How far is it going to go? How else could he have died? But again, toxicology reports, all of that will definitely spread a lot more light on this. And a lot more is going to show up in this case. My friends, it's stories like this as to why I do these episodes, why I do this show. Because truth is, at the end of the day, everyone's life matters. No one should lose their life because some other human being decided to take it upon themselves to play God and take someone's life. Because truth is we are all here to serve our own purpose. And sometimes greed gets in the way, and I want to encourage you. I want to just ask you to please be alert. Be aware. Be careful. You never know what could go wrong in this crazy world we live in. Until next time, my friends, this has been another episode of Deep True Crime. Be alert, be aware, be careful out there. I'm Manny Rodriguez. This has been another episode of Deep True Crime. Until next time, my friends, peace.